Greetings, how are you? Welcome to CITAM Church Online. This is the Anchored Man and my name is Precious Call. Over the last few weeks, we have been studying and looking into the life of Joseph. He was a unique young man because he was a dreamer, but also because he was born in his father's old age, and so his father loved him more. And the uniqueness in him made him very much hated by his brothers. And so because of that, he wasn't just a unique person, but he also had unique problems that followed him, including or beginning with him being thrown into the pit, him being sold out as a slave, him ending up in prison, and so on and so forth. Those are unique problems only he went through because of who he was. But in this video, I'm going to show you that what looks to us as problems was actually the plan which God was using to get Joseph to the very place where those dreams he had that actually landed him in trouble would become fulfilled. Have you ever thought about it? Is there a possibility that some of the things you're complaining and feeling bad about today in your life could be the very things God is using as an agent of movement? Could be the very things God is using to cause traction in your life? Because, see, let me begin from the end as we come back so that we understand better. Joseph dreamt of himself at a place of authority. And God had intended that he will lift and raise this young man so that one day he will be one of the highest rulers in the land of Egypt. That's the dream he had. And for that to be achieved, he needed to find a way of moving him from his father's house to the very place where that was going to be fulfilled. And how that happens is through the very things Joseph has to go through, which to us look like problems. They actually were problems. And so God is using the pit, he is using the slavery, he is using the house of Potiphar, he is using the false accusation, he is using Joseph's imprisonment as agents that get him moving slowly by slowly to the very place where God needs him so that those dreams would become a reality. So when Joseph finally becomes a prime minister in Egypt, he becomes a prime minister in Egypt because the king of Egypt knows him. And how does the king of Egypt know him? The king of Egypt knows him because one of his servants was in prison and he met Joseph there and he spoke of him to the king, and that's how the king came to know him. Now, for Joseph to have met this person who knew the king, he needed to have been in prison because that's where that person was. For Joseph to be in prison, he needed to be accused of something, whether truthful or a lie, so that by virtue of that conviction, he would end up in prison. For that accusation to be found, he needed to be in the house of Potiphar, where he was working as a slave, and then Potiphar's wife would try to make an advance against him, and when it flopped, that's where the accusation began. For him to be in the house of Potiphar, he needed to be in Egypt. For him to be in Egypt, he needed to find a way of leaving his father's house. He needed to find some means of transport that would get him to Egypt. For that to be possible, he needed, or his brothers needed, to meet a caravan of some traders that were moving and going to Egypt, so that he would be sold to them, and that way he would be transported to Egypt. For him to be sold as a slave, he needed his brothers to hate him, because you only sell out your brother when you don't like them. And for him to be hated by his brothers, he needed to be a dreamer. So look at that. The very things he goes through becomes the very mechanism, or becomes the caravan or the conduit or the transport system that God is using to get Joseph from one place to the very place where those dreams would come alive. This then explains why when Joseph meets them in chapter 50, he looks at them and he says, "Yo guys, what you hoped would harm me, God turned it around and used it for my good." In other words, Joseph recognizes there can't be the fulfillment of this dream unless, first of all, there is a traction from the place of dreaming to the place of fulfillment or accomplishment. So, the unique problems Joseph is going through are actually making up the unique plan which God is using to move this guy forward. If these dreams need to come true, we must find a way of moving him forward. So as he's going to the pit, to us, it looks like a downfall, it looks like a problem. But through the lens of God, he needs to be in the pit as the beginning point of the journey that would lead him to the fulfillment. Think about the builders of a skyscraper. When you want to build a skyscraper, the intention is to go up, but first of all, we must sink down and lay a proper foundation that will allow us to go high. We only go as high as the low we sink to. It's the depth of the foundation that determines how high that building will rise. Think about a warrior with an arrow and he intends to shoot at a target. The intention is that the arrow goes this way, but that's not how it begins. It begins by being stretched backwards. And as this arrow is being stretched backwards, it's gaining enough momentum, it's gaining enough traction so that when it is shot, it will surpass the very target it's been intended to. And perhaps when we look at the life of Joseph, and imagine he has big dreams, and when the journey starts, it looks like he's actually going backward. He saw himself going up, but he's now being lowered into a pit. And possibly that's God pulling him back like an arrow. And maybe that's what you're experiencing as a young person, as a young girl out there. God is pulling you back. You see your age mates moving forward. You see them achieving things. You see people getting married. You see them getting jobs. But your life looks like it's actually on a backward trajectory. You see people moving. You see people advancing. You see your age mates registering companies. And there you are. And your life feels like it's actually on a backward trajectory. And sometimes you rightfully find yourself asking, why? Has the Lord forgotten me? But these actually are problems that are forming the unique plan. And if you would just be patient with God, He is saying, allow me to stretch you, allow me to work on you, allow me to craft that plan, allow me to change your mind, allow me to reconfigure you and give you enough force so that by the time I release you, you'll not only live with speed, but you'll actually live with overtaking speed, that you'll be able to recover everything that you feel you've lost over the last 2 years where God has been taking you through a journey and through a process. And finally, these unique problems become the unique plan that God uses to get Joseph exactly where he needs him to be. That's not how it ends. In the last video, I'll show you that through all these changing circumstances of Joseph's life, the unique person that he was, the unique problems he encountered, the unique plan those problems were, there was also a unique person that never ever left him, not even once. See you on the next episode.